Summer.
We are live.
Okay, so this is Senate Appropriations and it's Friday and we start at 1, but we're a little bit late because I apologize. I had another meeting at noon and so we have another meeting, our organizational meeting of the Budget Committee of Conference at 2. But we thought we would take this afternoon and at least get a run through, and we have David Hall here who has been working with our Economic Development Committee on H-159, which has a direct connection to the budget since there's quite a bit of funding that we put in the budget with the understanding that the policy and the sort of the conditions under which the money is spent traveled in 159. So if you and I don't know, did Senator Sirotkin, he's probably in finance. So I think we're relying on you, David, to give us a run through. We know that the bill has not been voted out officially in committee and may be subject to change, but we thought we would take because of time. Although I must admit, I thought we were working against a deadline of next Friday, but I was told that there's another week. So I've been pretty hyper and thinking we had to have everything wrapped up by Friday, the 15th, but I now have learned that it's the 21st. So it's not quite as compressed as I thought, but we still want to hear from you. And so thank you for coming. And I have version 9.1, but that may not be the latest.
That is the most recent version that the Senate Economic Development Committee has endorsed.
Okay.
I can't tell you that it won't change between now and when they vote it out, but
okay. Oh, all right. So I don't know, you probably haven't had a chance to do a summary, but if you could walk through, because obviously all these sections are connecting back to the amounts of money that we have in the budget that we're going to be negotiating with the House momentarily.
how much detail, how much depth, how much time would you like me to take? Because I can do this very quickly or I can stretch it out until 2. What would you like?
I would like for you to hit the high points. It seems like there's an awful lot of intent. There's a lot of reference to findings and a lot of, you did an awful lot of writing here around sort of to provide the context for the recommendation. So I really would like to, the money and sort of what are the conditions
Sure.
of that flow with them.
And lastly, would you like me to share my screen with you all, or would you like me to just reference the sections?
Committee, do you have a sense of what you want?
We all have a copy that.
It's certainly easier for the public if you share the screen.
Okay.
Or I should share.
All right, I guess so. We'll share the screen.
Okay.
So then we don't have to look at your new hairstyle, I guess, huh?
Lucky for you.
Oh. Okay.
I gotta mute. I can't be laughing.
So yes, David Hall Legislative Council is H-159. You should be working from draft 9.1, which is the version most recently endorsed by Senate Committee on Economic Development. It still has possession of that bill, but has taken a straw poll indicating support of the committee for this proposal. There are highlights in this document which show what the Senate changes to the House version are. So the underlying document, the non-highlighted language is the House language, and then the Senate proposed changes are in yellow highlighting. There's a little bit of blue too. One of the consistent changes throughout, you'll see here on this first page in subsection C, is that there is a shift in the construct. The House actually appropriated the money in this bill itself, not in its own version of the budget. Whereas, as you know, your committee included all of the economic development spending in section G302 of your budget, H439. And so I've changed all the language in the House bill so that it references the money and the amount of money that you spent in your version of the budget, but there are no live appropriations in this bill. They are all contained within that section of your budget.
Yeah.
So you'll see the numbers in the sections correspond. You put in 2 million for tourism and marketing, and the Senate Committee Economic Development's specified an allocation of basically 1.25 million would go to the general marketing message of we're open and come to Vermont. And then 750,000 of that would be to develop a grant program to enable local, regional, statewide organizations to do campaigns and initiatives that increase consumer spending at local businesses. So this is, if you may recall, that pilot program that Department of Tourism and Marketing did, where they did the buy local grants. This is the concept underlying that $750,000.
Well, actually, it's very consistent with the view of this committee as well, where we've felt that there were local entities that understood the region, and so we have like to have some support for those regional initiatives that support, because obviously what Bennington might have for resources and needs is different than the Northeast Kingdom or Chittenden County. So I think I'm thinking Senator Sears' name must be right on this, but we can keep going, but I think that that's very consistent with what we've done in the past.
Good. So D just add charge that they advertise and market broadly to new communities, increase the diversity of visitors and visitation, and E, a report in February on how they spent the money and what happened. The next piece, this technology-based economic development, really has two components to it. One is your appropriation to the Agency of Commerce, so it can spend $800,000 working with small businesses that are basically pursuing the SBIR and STTR federal grants. So this would give 200 to allow them to access technical assistance in pursuit of those grants. The 400,000 would be to create a state matching grant. So if you were successful in getting the federal grant, you could qualify for a state matching grant up to $50,000 or 50% of the federal grant. And then the third piece, 200,000 of this, is the Industry Research Partnership Program, which really has two thrusts. One is to allow businesses to go out and purchase prototyping, lab time, technology assessment, et cetera. And the other piece, though, is also to sort of help build this ecosystem of technology-based business development and build relationships among businesses, researchers, that type of thing. So you'll see that's all underlying House language, but the change in the Senate side was to make sure that 800,000 went straight to the agency. And then the other component of this, as I said, is to the UVM Office of Engagement. It's $1 million over a 2-year period to leverage the research services and data science capabilities of the Office of Engagement to support these technology-based businesses.
David?
This is all ARPA funds. That's why we have the ARPA language.
Madam Chair, if I might.
Yeah.
So on this $1 million for the Office of Engagement, it's allowing them to do what they see as their mission, which is leveraging the research services of the university for the greater community. But then it also says that they can provide assistance. I'm assuming that's in the form of grants. And is there any guidelines for them about how they divvy up the $1 million?
No.
So they could conceivably run a small grant program or a large grant program, depending on what they think.
To be honest with you, Senator, this is about the extent of guidance that this provision has had since it left the House. There's never been a lot more to it.
Yep. And I just wanted to have that clear in my own mind.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that is different than the $1 million that we have in our list for the COVID-related research.
Yeah, those are distinct.
Yeah. I just want to make sure, because there's a number of millions floating around. All right, we'll keep going. ACCD again.
Yeah, so they both have a separate, they have their own reporting requirement for next January of what they did with this money. The next piece, post-secondary CTE system, you may recall, you'll see here 2019 Act 80. The legislature had directed the Department of Labor to work with the sort of the stakeholders in the post-secondary CTE system and come up with a proposal of how to have a better integrated and sort of holistic system for adult CTE. That work ultimately did not happen because in large part to COVID, and the House wanted to resuscitate the directive, put it back in this bill. The Department of Labor and others expressed some reservations about the timing, and therefore Senate Economic Development pushed everything out by a year. So now that work and that report would basically, it'd be a check-in in April, an RFP in September, and a preliminary status report in January of 23, and a final report in December of 23.
Okay.
Any questions there?
No, it does tie into some of the requests we've had from the CTEs, because they've been really hammered with enrollment as a result of COVID. But that's different than this. This is just how, their loss of funding, for their existing programs. So I just throw that out. Other committee members may have heard from their centers around. And so I've asked our chair of education to follow up with AOE, because in the past, with one of the funds, earlier funds that the department got, they actually used some of those funds to go to the career and technical education centers. So that's just an aside. It just triggered that thought. So if you've heard from them about the loss of funding due to the lower enrollment because they haven't been out to recruit, this is an associated issue, but not what's being addressed here. And that is how we use the resources of these centers to really more effectively for workforce development. So let's keep going. That's just an aside. Maybe other people have heard.
Sure.
I didn't know we had a workforce expansion fund.
So my understanding is that's what the Department of Labor is calling it, but it's basically coming out of their adult tech money. And that's another concern that they had, was they're going to have to just fund this in-house. And if it's taken in this coming year, it will come at the expense perhaps of funding for adult tech education. So they were a little bit concerned about that. And another reason they wanted to stretch out the timeline and the cost.
And was this in the House version as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Better Places.
Yep. So we can skip all the findings. The House bill, plenty of findings and intent. And then there's the program created. It is a statutory program with a fund, the Better Places Fund. They do have the program parameters, largely went with the House version. If you're familiar with the proposal, it is to, give grants out to municipalities or nonprofits or others to revitalize or create new public spaces to create better places. And the niche of the program, though, is that it is predicated on matching grants raised through crowdfunding. And that's what some of the parameters are in here about how much is a grant award. Your Senate committee reduced the max amount from 50 to 30,000. It largely kept the eligibility criteria the same about having to have in-kind support, matching funds, etc. Limitations on how much any one person could donate, because they want this to be a broadly funded program. But the Senate committee did change the House matching fund requirement as well, so that in the Senate version, it is not less than a third of the grant award has to come from a crowdfunding campaign, basically. So they want to demonstrate, again, broad-based support from the community, from donors and volunteers. the Senate added a few more pieces to it. So the language here, the appropriation language, it just says of that million that your budget gives to the agency, it says agency move that money directly into the Better Places Fund. 8, there is a sunset on this of 2 years. And 9, there's
Are we making this so difficult that nobody would want to bother?
it's a fair question. I think the Department of Housing and Community Development has run one pilot program with much success, and the requirements, while complicated, are very intentional, I would say. That's
This
all I
is
can offer.
kind of reflective of last year when it wasn't funded. They got money from a philanthropic organization to fund this work.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, we make it so difficult. I'm thinking of our local little nonprofit radio station with a board of maybe 7 people. And one person has money and is willing to donate to it. Now we're saying, well, you got to collect from more people. I don't know. This mini managing stuff is really troubling.
Well, this is what got added by.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. I'm probably not voting for this bill anyway.
All right. Well, let's keep going. You may change your mind before we get done, Senator Sears.
I doubt it.
Well, I would think with 750,000 going out to regional entities, you would love it.
Oh, yeah,
I think you're connecting with what I'm messaging you.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep going.
So the International Business Attraction and Investment Program is, this is a $300,000 general fund appropriation that the agency would use for up to 2 years to contract with a foreign trade representative, probably in Montreal, to promote connections, business development, and recruitment with Canada-based businesses. So it's basically 2 years of funding to make that connection, those relationships, see how it's working, and then the evaluation will happen whether or not to continue that.
Well, we put the money in for the contract. We felt it would probably be for 3 years, so we put it in for the full amount. Okay, section 12.
The next 2 sections don't do anything at this point. Originally, when this language was in the House, they had about $21 million of grants to the state colleges, and the findings and intent were designed to link and show the linkage between the funding from ARPA and the need to get people back into school to finish their programs, because they had, unfortunately had to drop out for whatever reason, largely due to COVID. The House then moved the money and the grants and scholarships into its version of the budget. So it kept findings and intent here, but it moved that money to the budget. I understand that you guys made changes to those grants and loans and scholarships in your budget. And so at this point, this language is just sort of intent and purpose without any substantive anything.
Okay.
So
The substance is in the budget.
that's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Same with this micro business. You guys, and I've changed the language to reflect what you did. So you had $200,000 added in the base funding for OEO for the micro business development programs, and then the 1.5 for the Embrace program. So this doesn't do anything other than reference though and say that micro business is doing a good job. And as I've mentioned to several committees now, I think you probably surmised, ultimately, we will have to reconcile both the money and the language in this bill and whatever works out to be the final language of the budget. So, I'm definitely keeping in touch with Steph and others on that as it progresses.
Yeah, no, we understand that. Should we, I'm wondering, as a matter of some people, we've been getting some negative feedback about the term BIPOC. But I'm just wondering, should we be using that acronym in a statute? Should we be talking, should we be actually writing it out? Black, Indigenous, people of color.
Well, so we do spell it out in the language of the session law here, and I think this has sort of become our office's, official format: Black, comma, Indigenous, comma, and persons of color. The term, there's a really good article in the New York Times recently about the term BIPOC, its evolution, its use. As with any term, it has been embraced by some and opposed by others. I think it's most important to recognize that people who are in whatever community they identify with get to choose their own terms. But for purposes of this statute, this is the section that was developed by the House and then further refined by the Senate. Representative Mulvaney Stanek in the House and Senator Rahm on the Senate side have been people spearheading it, and this is where we are.
No, I guess my question is, should we use the acronym BIPOC in the heading?
No, please spell it
Entirely
out.
up to you.
Please spell it out.
Should be spelled out.
So many people have no idea what that means.
So even though it's down below, it was more one of just
Consistency.
consistency and right. So that's,
I would put, especially in the heading, I would put it spelled out.
and then spell it out again. If it's key, it's used again down through, you could put it or BIPOC in parentheses, but it just seems like you've got a heading with no reference.
Right.
But that's not for us. You can take that back to your committee, but it was just a question.
Sure, fair question. I will try to remember to approach it with them if and when they take this bill back up.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So the purpose of this section is really twofold. One is to provide funding for one or more contractors, sort of facilitate this conversation about what kind of state support network there could be or should be to advance the economic development interests of BIPOC-owned businesses. The other piece really relates to the expansion of data collection by the Secretary of State and the Office of Professional Regulation concerning voluntary information about people who are starting businesses or signing up for licensure, certification, registration, et cetera. So in a lot of words, again, the first part of this appropriation, or the appropriation itself, is for funding one or more contractors who will help lead this discussion and develop a proposal about BIPOC business development and statewide business support networks. And then the other piece, again, is this concept of voluntary data collection on who is starting businesses and where they
And
are.
that was in the House version as well. This is just the Senate changes to the
So
House.
the collection of data was in the House version. The Senate committee expanded it to specifically include OPR and to ensure that any data collection is through a voluntary procedure. Any questions?
No.
So section 15 is the other general fund appropriation that you made. It's $900,000 to the seed capital fund. And, the money here would go through the fund, which is a statutorily created fund for investing in, new and growth stage businesses, risk stage seed capital. It's run by the Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies. There is a statute that governs the process they use. They have a board of advisors, et cetera. This does layer on a few more requirements about prioritizing sourcing and funding for BIPOC, veteran, and women-owned businesses, working with VITA to make sure that these businesses are accessing VITA loans to the extent their availability, and it also excludes from potential recipients businesses that have received other significant sort of coronavirus-related funding. So retail, lodging, hospitality, restaurant, food service. Those are not the kinds of businesses this is seeking to fund. It's rather these sort of growth stage businesses that need an infusion of capital. Any questions?
I turned off my sound because I have the lawnmower outside. I can't, with this, the document on the screen, I can't. So any committee members, if you've got a question so far, speak up, but otherwise we're going to just keep going.
Okay.
Okay. I think we're pretty familiar because we dealt with the money in the budget. So this is putting the words with the money.
Yep. So there was a reporting requirement for that one.
And the blue was added by the Senate.
That's correct. This is it's blue because it was one of the more recent changes from version 7 or 8 to 9. So they wanted a specific report on their efforts and outcomes to prioritize those types of businesses. The next several sections, new relocating remote employees. This is S62 verbatim dropped into this bill. It combines and codifies those two programs. And I believe you had $1 million in your budget for this.
$1 million, right.
Yep. So unless you have any questions on those specific programs, that's what's happening there. There's a couple of new pieces that were late to the game that the committee has been fleshing out the requirements for it. And the first of those is the Capital Investment Grant Program. You have appropriated $11 million in ARPA funds to the Agency of Commerce to implement this program, which in a nutshell is designed to provide grants for not more than 50% of the cost of a transformational regional project. There's a lot of details here. I don't know how specific you want to get. It's basically available to private businesses, whether for-profit or nonprofit, small businesses, basically is defined by SBA, so not more than 20 locations, not publicly traded. There are requirements that they demonstrate regional support, that they've leveraged other sources of funding, that they have to have this grant to make it work, that they can manage the project. The administration proposed a cap of $3 million or the estimated state fiscal impact. The Senate committee lowered that to $500,000.
Wait a minute. An award shall not exceed the lesser of or the estimated. Okay, so all right, so that was added by economic development.
Fresh from the Senate. This was
Okay.
not in the House version at all.
Okay. So an estimate or the estimated state impact, the lesser of. I'm just trying to read. So if a business award shall not exceed the lesser of or the estimated. So if the estimated fiscal impact was 300,000, that's what they would get?
That's correct.
How do you reconcile that with the requirement up above that has to have some substantial impact?
Well, the impact is one of the sort of the threshold requirements. It has to be impactful on a regional basis. And this is a cap on the amount of the grant. I mean, we haven't gotten to it yet, but there's a couple of parts in the application and the analysis. And one of
Okay.
those is using basically the Remy model, et cetera, to calculate what this net state fiscal impact will be based on objective data. But then there's also other contributing factors that are more subjective. And that includes all those components, such as, is it transformational? Does it have regional support? Does it comply with a regional
All right.
plan?
I guess
So-
we're just, we were criticized for our budget of using money in such a way that it didn't result in impactful investments. And I guess I'm just trying to see how that cap ties to, impactful
Sure.
use.
I would say that the amount of the grant is definitely the most discussed part of this. And there was a lot of debate, both between the committee and the administration and among committee members about where this should be.
Okay.
And it ultimately prevailed to start small, get more information in January, and potentially expand the parameters if necessary.
Yeah, well, I think in the governor's recommend and the administration, this was the 30, 30, and 30, a $90 million program or allocation, with the RDCs being involved. Okay.
Yes. And they also wanted $3 million per project, and that did not happen.
Okay. Well, let's keep going here. We're up to page 34, committee, so we're making progress.
Can I just ask a question about that?
Yes, you may.
What, I see the 2 or 3 places where it mentions a transformation, and it just talks about job development. What do they mean?
Fair question.
Well, it's the centerpiece around what these grants are supposed to be going out for. And it says it has to be an in-state business, blah, blah. But what does transformational mean?
I guess it's like pornography, but you have to define it yourself.
Okay, I'm just,
I don't know. It's
I'm
one
just
of those
trying to figure
terms.
out- I'm just trying to figure out who might apply. And it says there has to be project readiness, alignment and consistency with regional plans. But it says transformation. I don't get what they.
What is the definition, or what is the criteria for transformational? I guess is what you're asking.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like, we'll know it when we see it. You
Bill-
just have to say
Bill-
transformational a whole lot.
Bill must know what that means. What's it mean, Bill?
I think it means but for.
oh, good. That's very helpful.
Well, okay. I read through all the stuff and well, anyways.
Really,
Well,
it's just like the but for clause. It's like you're basically certifying something based on a kind of a gut feeling and self-certification. And it's, I just don't think there's a lot of there, Rich.
Well, see, because it has to be an existing business, what I don't want somebody to do is they're an existing business that's already working in it, not go say, well, I'm not going to change the world with this. I'm just going to increase I'm just going to bring 200 jobs to an area. I wouldn't want them to read this and go, well, I'm not going to be transformational. I'm just going to increase the employment in the area.
You know what? All you need is a good grant writer, Senator Westman.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
I think I appreciate what you're saying, and it would be better if it was a substantive, something substantive, as a transformative really carries on as though you're going to really re-engineer and substantially modify or change how you're doing your work.
Yep.
Or if you're an existing business, and I guess that's what grant writers get hired to do. So
Well,
Okay,
I would think if you had a bunch of delivery vehicles that were all gas or diesel and you changed them all to electric vehicles, you would be meeting the goal of this.
no, you won't, because that doesn't increase the grand list value, improvements to supply chain, or
that's right.
increase the
right.
GDP.
Yeah, it doesn't add jobs. In this, it says add jobs. And I would think if I have a regular business that came in and said, we're going to increase the employment by 100 in the area, that's good. But that doesn't mean they're going to transfer the area into something else.
Well, A, B, C, and D are much more concrete and measurable.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, so
Senator
let's,
Westman, I would like it if you and I could go in together and start a new ski area. That would be transformational.
Yes.
I'm not
Well-
sure it would do much for the economy, but it would be transformative for the two of you.
Yes, it would be.
That would be fun.
Mhm.
All
right.
The stuff on your screen, again, is the objective piece that's going to go through the model and spit out a number on how great it's going to be for the state and new revenue streams. But then you'll see in 3, the 3 part is predicated, is modeled on the Northern Borders Commission grants. And that's where they have these interagency teams that evaluate projects based on factors. And I concede that A through D here are more categorical. There is more information and description in the agency's memorandum describing the program, but the transformational nature of the project and for the region in part means it is beneficial for 2 or more municipalities. It's not just one business, one town. It's actually, bigger than that. B is, do you have permits? Have you worked with the local community and the local RDCs and others? Do you have other funding sources that support this? Same with C. Does this, if you look at the RPC plan for development or the RDC economic development plan, does this align with the priorities that these municipalities and these regions have identified? And D, the impact on jobs is both, does it create new jobs? Does it ensure the retention of existing jobs? So they basically will go through categories that have factors and they will assign point values. And so combine the objective analysis with the subjective analysis, make a recommendation to the Secretary of Commerce, who has the ultimate authority to approve grants.
Okay,
All right. And of course, there's monitoring, including making data available to the auditor and to the agency and producing records. There's a report. There's always a report. And then that's it for that program. We move on to economic recovery grants. Are you ready to move on to that?
yes,
I'd like to ask a question about, every time we try to get the auditor to do something, he doesn't have time for it. And rightfully, I think, complains that we say, do this, do that. And I'm just wondering, did anybody consult with the auditor's office?
well, this is the record, so that if he does the audit, that there's the back documentation available to him. So,
If he does the audit.
well, you're right, but it seems to me when we put money out, they have to, whoever gets it has to commit that they're maintaining records and have access to records, so that if an audit's done, we can determine that the money was spent properly.
Okay,
So to me, this is, if you're signing on for the money, this is what you need to be prepared to provide if you're subject of an audit.
okay.
Is that correct reading of that,
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Okay. Because I do think sometimes, depending on well, we were talking about business grants. Some entities may not be aware that they could be subject to audits.
Yeah,
And they could be quite surprised in terms of what that findings might be, but this is what they're agreeing to get the money. So we're down to recovery grants.
Yes. Well, and then there's apprenticeship, but so this is, this section 23, it basically takes the $20 million that you appropriated for recovery grants and lumps it in with the $10 million that was provided in H315. And it says that all of that money should be administered pursuant to the criteria in H315. But then this adds a few more pieces to it. That the value of a grant won't exceed the lesser of the business's net adjusted loss, 3 months of fixed expenses, or $150,000. That the agency would defer its calculation for a reasonable time to figure out if a business qualifies for some other source of funding. And 3, that the agency may adjust its calculation of loss for non-COVID related items, including carry forwards and depreciation,
David,
to adjust awards.
quick question.
Yep.
I'm not sure if it was that 10 million in 315, but there was a category of grants there that you were excluded from if you had received any assistance from the other programs from the CARES Act.
Right.
And I'm wondering, does this carry into this 20 million?
Well, so, that ultimately changed the way that the program that you're remembering as it started out. It first came through and said, you are ineligible for any grants if you have already received other assistance.
Right.
And that was modified so that for the
If it was
first
de minimis,
30 days, you get priority if you haven't received any money. And after that, on a rolling basis, as applications continue to come in, first priority will continue to go to businesses who haven't received anything, and then other people can get money as well. So it's no longer exclusionary. It's just a priority at this point to give first dollar to businesses that haven't received other assistance.
okay. Very good. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we're almost at the end and we have 10 minutes before we have to. Okay, this is the apprenticeship.
So this is $2 million of ARPA funds. It's split up so that it's all of the 2 million is accounted for as a not more than. So not more than 100 for outreach and recruitment for enrollment, not more than 1.525 for instruction and on-the-job training for new apprentices, and not more than 375,000 to provide vouchers for new apprentices to buy equipment, tool supplies, textbooks, etc. Layered over that, though, is the authority for the department to use not more than 8% of the amounts to administer the grants and activities.
Okay, so the 375 is part of the 8%.
So the 8% is just, the 8% is going to come out of wherever the department takes it out of.
No, but my point, 8% of 2 million.
Right, that's correct. Of the
375 is more than 8%.
The 375 is just for the vouchers, and that's
That
a
seems-
specific maximum allocation for that part of it.
It seems like, okay, it just seems like a lot of money to administer that one piece, that's all.
Well, so the administration is for the whole section, so it's for the whole 2 million. So they are authorized to use up to $160,000 to administer all of this money. it doesn't specify from which pot they take it. And also because of the construct, those are just maximums for each pot.
Okay,
but
all right,
not
all right.
minimums.
All right, okay, it's just, they all interrelate, so, yeah, all right. I'm just saying, if they had a total of 2 million, 10% 200,000. So number 3, by definition, exceeds the 8%. If that, I'm just having a hard time understanding the interrelationship between 8% and the 375, and even though it says not more, it's just kind of confusing, that's all. On a Friday afternoon. But
Yeah, you've got it right. I mean, in the end, Senate Economic Development said, we're comfortable with letting the agency have some flexibility on where they allocate the money and where they take the administrative funds from.
that I understand. But the 375 is greater than the 8%. Even regardless of where they take 8%. That's my only, that's why it's kind of confusing if I were like trying to say, well, I can't spend more than 8%, but it says I can use not more than 375, but 375 is more than 8%. So in essence, the 375 means nothing because you can't go above, say 160.
Well, they could take the administrative costs for the program out of the $1.5 million pot and give out $375,000 worth of vouchers. Just as an example.
I guess, all right. So the 375 is for vouchers, not the
Yes.
administration of a voucher system.
That's correct. I recognize that it says to administer a voucher system. It may as well just say to provide vouchers of not.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's what I was struggling with.
I see now what you mean.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Should be gone. That word should be gone.
Yeah, it just needs to be reworded because I was thinking administration, so, okay.
I'll just keep that in here as a note. Because
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Otherwise, the amounts just don't reconcile at all. Let's keep going here. I'm down to 6 minutes before we have to move on.
I think you're done. I mean, the C is just sort of an aspirational statement of priorities. You should fund new stuff, not just pay for existing programs. You should support vocations that don't have robust apprenticeship already, et cetera.
But some of those, in fact, where they're most traditional and where we need plumbers and electricians and whatever the most, or linemen, or so.
Yeah, I think so. The key word for them in this section honestly may change, but is supplant. So if you have a program that sponsors 5 electrical apprentices, we don't want you to use this money to.
No, I agree with
pay for
that.
the 5.
I agree
we
with
want
that.
you to add 3 more.
Okay. All right. I think it's how you're defining new. You're talking about additional, not supplementation. Okay. All right.
And that is it, just the effective dates.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in on such short notice, David.
Oh, my pleasure. Fridays are usually a grab bag of fun.
Okay. Oh, yeah. It's great to be an afternoon committee on a Friday afternoon. So I'm going to put the screen, get us back. And it's almost 2:00 and we have our name committee of conference and we're going to go in to that now at 2. And then, which won't be long. This is going to be organizational. I think that there's probably, Chrissy can send out if people want to observe. It's going to be pretty, it's like sitting around the room in the Ethan Allen room if we were there. So, but you're welcome. Chrissy, is there information about how committee members could access the YouTube feed?
Yes, I'll send the link now. And for people listening, it's also posted on our webpage on our today's agenda. But I'll send an individual link to senators in this group.
Who are
Okay.
those conferees?
I
have a
think
general-
I'm not sure. I know it's Mary Hooper. I assume it's Peter Fagan, and you know the third?
Kimberly Jessup. Kimberly
Okay.
Jessup's the third.
Okay.
Can I ask a question generally for Becca? Is there going to be some place where we can go online, or is there some place I can go online and see all the conference committees?
Yes, I can see meetings that are continuing throughout. There, we actually have a really good resource on the legislative homepage, and I can send you the link to that as well.
That's what I'm asking.
Okay. Okay, because there are a lot of bills that are going to have to be conferenced.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So this is the end of the week for us. And so I'm going to adjourn